One other important point about this is that where you've tucked the snare into these sticks, you really want it just kissing the string. You don't want it jammed in there too far, because if the rabbit feels the resistance when it tries to pass through here, it may back out, and you want it to just slip off there just as easy as can be. So you want it just barely in the little slit that you've carved in with your knife. I've taken the trigger off so you guys can get a little bit better look at it, and I want you to see this detail at the top. There's going to be so much tension on this string that's connecting the trigger to the snare pole that you're going to want to carve a little notch around the top here for your string to nest in when you tie it on. And you should try and do the same thing on the snare pole, unless there's branches sticking off that are going to prevent your string from slipping off the end of the snare pole. Alright, now pay attention, because once you get your first mouthful of buttermilk fried rabbit, you're going to want to make sure you really knew what you were doing so you can get another mouthful of buttermilk fried rabbit. Check it out. Here we go. This snare is now active and connected to the snare pole. The string you want to use, it's got to be fairly strong. We're not talking about sewing thread here. What I like to use is braided camouflage fishing line. It's really hard for the rabbits to see. You want the line to blend in to the surroundings, and you want it to be strong enough that it's not going to snap under the weight of the intended game you are after. Now, you want this snare loop to be as close to round as possible, and you want it to be pretty open while still not exceeding the 5-finger diameter. Now, this is how it's connected. Once you've got the snare in place and pulled the trigger down and set it, and you can tie it right there to the crook in the trigger. And if you have problems with it slipping, you got to adjust your carving and make sure the surfaces are touching the right way. You can experiment with having the line that leads up to the snare pole be on one side or other of the trigger coming up. And it's almost impossible to see that line, but that knot of branches right there is popping out of the end of my snare pole and leading right down to the trigger. It's a bent over piece of buckthorn. Alright, one of the next most important parts of this set is what is referred to as a duck stick. This is a stick that you jammed into the side of the trail. It could have a crook in it or be straight, as long as it's coming across the top of the noose. You can have it on either side, it doesn't matter, but this is what's going to cause the rabbit not only to put its head exactly where you want it, but also to make it tuck its ears so that its head fits through the snare. Now, the next indispensable part of the setup of this trap is to put sticks crisscrossing above the snare to prevent the rabbit from jumping the snare. The name of the game in trapping, whether it's primitive or modern trapping, is to make sure the route of travel you want the animal to take is the only or the easiest route of travel available. Now, you're putting these sticks over here to prevent the rabbit from jumping. Rabbits will almost always, at least 50% of the time, jump your snares. They see a little obstacle, it's nothing for them to pop over that. Makes them feel a little safer. You want to make sure they can't do that. So block off above your snare very effectively.